Well, indeed, the action is even starting from here this morning. We're going to be going straight to paper review for you. And joining us this morning is Mr. Nuruddin Abdullah, who is the editor of 21st Century Chronicle and former assistant editor at Daily Trust newspapers. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Oh, don't mind me and my team. We have a little thing going on about Lagos and Abuja, but hey, we're going to show them that Abuja is Abuja.
Yeah.
So let's start with this one this morning, looking at the Guardian newspaper for you. And they have this 2023 Obi quits PDP, eyes Labour NNPP tickets. That's the lead story this morning on the front page of The Guardian. PDP Northern Elders look to North Central for candidate, insist consensus is pathway to stability. Legal move to stop PDP presidential primary fails. APC chair hints on consensus peak for party's presidential flag bearer. So you find all of those stories. I mean, quite a number of them packed or stacked into one headline, if you like. But did we see this coming, this move by presidential aspirant, former Governor Peter Obi? Did you see this? Did you see him making this move at all?
Yes, particularly if you follow the social media. I think Mr. Peter Obi is one of the most celebrated aspirants, but mostly on Twitter. Yeah, he has been jetting around the country recently, you know, convincing delegates for their votes. But for him to suddenly leave a major opposition party to NNPP, and surprisingly, NNPP has already, like Senator Ozzy Ojakalu has said, has already a candidate, a presidential candidate, former Governor of Kano, Rabi Musa Kwankwaso.
I'm surprised that you said you saw this coming. I mean, how did you see this coming?
Look at the number of the aspirants in PDP. From afar, I'm not a delegate, but look at their chances.
They're quite a number, though.
Sure. And look at the chances. So unless if, for instance...
So you think he's calculated his chances and he's saying, no, this is not going to work?
Sure. But the most surprising of all of what he did actually is to go to a Labour Party.
Has he gone yet? I mean, this is just...
That is the permutations.
Yeah.
Or even on Twitter, for instance, his alliance with Rabi Kwankwaso. So is he going to pick is Rabi Kwankwaso going to hand over the NNPP presidential ticket to him? Or is he pairing with him as a running mate? To me, if he does that, for instance, you know, he was a running mate to Atiku on PDP in 2019. Now, it looks like a demotion because even the NNPP chances, I can say zero, but it's really insignificant compared to the political situation in the country.
Well, it's unclear, but as you rightly pointed out, he is popular at least on one major social media in Nigeria, and that's Twitter. I was reading through the comments, and there were quite a lot, I must tell you, from what I saw. At the time I joined that conversation, or looked through the conversation, they had over 2,500 comments at that time. By this morning, I do not know how many comments alone. I mean, that's not counting retweets or likes for that particular statement as was put out. And a lot of the comments had that they're going to be following him wherever he went. Do you think that he wants to really give a chance to people to see, you know, outside of the parties, what exactly his chances are like? I mean, we've seen people like President Muhammadu Buhari, who tried 4 times, and every time he ran, he always had a huge following. Do you think we could be seeing that sort of person in former Governor Peter Obi?
Yes, but unlike Buhari, you know, he ran 4 times before he was eventually elected. Peter Obi doesn't have the Buhari's constituency. His constituency, which is the social media, most of them don't vote. So, you know, all these Twitter likes, on comments, mentioning hashtags and whatever, don't translate to votes during election.
That's your fear?
Yeah.
Because it could be changing. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah. And it's Nigeria. Anything can happen. But unlike Buhari, you know, Buhari has a block vote. At least the Northwest, Northeast, and some parts of the North Central in 2003, 27, 2011, and 2015. But in his own case, he doesn't have that block vote yet. But like we said, anything can happen in Nigeria.
Okay, let us not stay too long on that particular one, but there are a few more just underneath the nameplate here. Let's look at this one. Pretty disturbing. I know that, there are a few more riders I want to take there, but let's see this other headline. Abuja-Kaduna train attack. Victims' families ask government to heed terrorist ultimatum. That is also a story on the front page of The Guardian this morning. We saw them yesterday holding a press briefing right here in the Federal Capital Territory. And it was a pretty emotional one, especially after the terrorists gave a 7-day ultimatum. They also say that the terrorists have opened up a channel between them and the families of those that they have abducted. How seriously do you think the federal government is taking this threat?
With what happened, I think, in the last 48 hours, a journalist, a publisher in Kaduna, first broke this news that the terrorists contacted him and they made their demands known. So part of their demands was the release of 8 of their kids. Indeed. You understand? So when I saw that story, I said, okay, maybe the federal government at last is doing something. That is one. And secondly, time is of essence here.
Indeed.
These people have spent 2 months in custody. And the federal government, whatever they are doing, the families of those hostages should be at least in the know of some of those things that they are doing. One is I don't want to say it, the kidnapping of the sons and daughters of some of the terrorists. So we learned that even terrorists bother about their kids for the first time. If you hear the Hausa conversation between the Kaduna publisher and the terrorists, they say that the terrorist was even heard on the audio saying that some of the kids are even 1 year old, 3 year old. You understand? The federal government should, as a matter of urgency, devise all means, including hiring foreign mercenary, if they are going to conduct an operation. Because apart from the demand for the release of these kids who are being held in one orphanage or the other, they are equally demanding the release of their commanders. If their commanders, some of them, they have blood stained in their hands. Some of them are combatant people. So if there is need to hire a foreign mercenary to conduct an operation to release these people, let it be. Yeah, there may be some casualties, but at least that's what the government should do. It is not about sovereignty. We can go to Israel, we can go to England, we can go to US. You can hire anybody to free these hostages, because one thing, they are embarrassing the government. And they are touting Nigerians.
2 months, is certainly a long time. Let's leave it there for the Guardian newspapers. Over now to you in Lagos.
All right, gladly. Take a look at Nigerian Tribune, Mr. Abdallah. This is what you find. Why Obi dumped PDP and a host of riders. I think that's like one of the biggest stories in the political space as at this moment. Labour Party, 3 others being considered as next destination, 48 hours to PDP primaries, Northern Elders push for compromise, and a host of others. Don't forget that the PDP also had its governorship primaries yesterday, and you see Makinde, Uba, Ikone, as well as others emerged PDP governorship candidates. Abaribe Ekweremadu Aliyu Gusau withdraw from primaries. Court refuses to stop PDP from conducting primaries in Rivers. We've heard a lot of those issues. We'll definitely be delving into them. But there's a picture on the front page that shows the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, actually visiting President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday. But under that one as well, consensus not ruled out. That's coming from the APC chairman for closest screening panel. But I'd like you to speak to this one. It's just right there on top of the nameplate, and it's coming from Anambra. Anambra murder. Soludo declares curfew in 8 local government areas. Ohaneze condemns killing of pregnant women, her kids. NEF warns against reprisals. Can demands justice. It's a page 12 read. I recall the president also, the presidency releasing a statement regarding that. So looking at all the issues and the recent killings we have seen in that area, particularly in Anambra State, how would you rate the handling of it at the state and even at the federal level?
Okay. I think it's unfortunate how the Southeast has been converted into a slaughterhouse in the recent weeks, particularly with the election of Chief Solido. You know, before the murder of Miss Harira and her 4 kids, you know, there was the gruesome beheading of a lawmaker, as well as the threat that more lawmakers will face the same fate. This, apart from pockets of attacks. So, and unfortunately, I've seen that there are some ethnization of the thing, like we had 10 years ago in Borno State. It's Boko Haram. So when there's any attack, a murder, the police, the security agency will just case closed. It's Boko Haram. Now it's a non-gunman. Politically motivated assassination may be taking place, but they are being swept under a non-gunman. That is it. And the latest, in the last 1 week, particularly the murder of the woman and her kids, you know, I think whoever the perpetrator is trying, you know, to stir national crisis. Her ethnicity, her religion. Thankfully, you know, Nigerians are more sensible now. You know, there won't be any reprisal, you know, in those days, Kano and what have you. So that is the more reason why the federal government should step in. Let Nigerians know what they're doing. Because if that thing happens again, for instance, can you control what will happen in other side of the country? Or something similar happening in other part of the country? We are in an election year. Politicians, like we know, are desperate. So if the government allow these senseless killings to continue, desperate politicians may key in and take advantage of it. And nobody knows what will happen next. And look at the outrage that followed the murder of that one. You have to condemn it, you know. If you don't condemn it, you know, you will be stigmatized and what have you. So the ethnic dimension of the crisis in Southeast is something the federal government should look into. Well, you can militarize the areas where these things happen, for instance, you understand? Put more boots on ground. Let's see people being arrested. Let's see people being taken to court.
Well, as you said, Mr. Abdallah, the governments definitely have their works cut out for them. Just to mention this before we flip over to the next front page, Borno confirms 32 killed, 14 bodies recovered. It's a really sad one and shocking, especially because you talked about Boko Haram. It looks like there's still a big challenge on our hands. And it was said that these were young people who went to work at a certain, is it a mine, or were trying to get some precious metal. A really sad one. That's the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Yes, indeed, and I'm taking it from there, Coyote. That's a pretty sad one, and it will have consequences for food security in the near future, and I believe that that's one subject that we'll be looking at. But from there, let's look at the Daily Trust newspapers this morning, and it leads with this story: Lamido's son Uba Barde Jajari, others pick tickets, and the writers say a lot more. Bauchi governor appears on ballot despite presidential bid. That's an interesting one. Fintiri Makinde secure return ticket. Exercise postponed in Niger, Imo. Ekweremadu, Abaribe, Gusau, Maku, pull out. That's the one I'd like you to speak to, sir, but let's go to the top corner before you begin to react to those ones. Tears as woman, 4 kids killed by IPOB, buried in Anambra. That's a very sad one. Inducing delegates pushing Nigeria towards plutocracy. From there, let's take a return to the big story. The pullouts, the withdrawals by some of the leading candidates in the southeast states and indeed in the north central, Ekweremadu Abaribe, citing disaffection over the process through which the main candidates, the candidates emerged. And also the governors that he merged with return tickets could have practically returned unopposed. What are your thoughts about the process that produced the candidates that we saw in the PDP primary elections yesterday?
Yes, now the political ecosystem is being run by delegates. So you saw what happened in Kaduna during the primaries for the House of Reps. A son of the former vice president lost out. He got only 2 votes after spending millions. But we learned that he used crude means to recover his funds. The process, I can say, has been unprecedentedly monetized. Money, and I don't know what INEC is doing, money everywhere. In the case of Kaduna, for instance, the son of the former vice president was reportedly given 2.5 million to delegates. Another one gave 3.5. Another one gave 3 million. The one with the highest money won. The second one, and he got only 2 votes. So it's the same thing elsewhere. Go to Jigawa, for instance. Lamido's son, who is synonymous to PDP in the state, his son got almost all the votes as a governorship candidate.
Yeah.
His opponent got only 2 votes, according to reports. So that's what monetization of the system. The Electoral Act, the INEC, we have a cap. But this apparent monetization of the...
How do we know it's money? I mean, how do we not know that he's popular? I mean, his popularity has earned him that many votes.
Okay. Jigawa is synonymous to Lamido. We all know, particularly from this part of the country. And we're talking about PDP. It is one thing. Nobody can defeat him in that field. Apart from money, the PDP godfathers in the state must decide. Just look around from Benue, Kaduna, Kano, for instance, even though the PDP is in crisis, and some other states, you will see that apart from money, you have to secure the blessings of the godfathers.
Well, Mr. Abdallah, one of the things that comes to me here, my apologies, I mean, you for butting in, you already made it clear, where this whole thing is going, the role of money, and maybe you shared notes with Mr. Rwane, who said, who came up with a caption, delegates procurement process. I don't know if that's what you're speaking to. But let's flip quickly to the front page of the Nigerian News Direct this morning, and it's talking about politics as well. 2023 presidency, mass defection in PDP over Peter Obi's withdrawal. Do you see that happening as well, a mass withdrawal or mass defection in PDP to or from PDP over Peter Obi's withdrawal? Quick look at the riders before you respond. Obi vows to rescue Nigerians through different routes as NNPC Labour Party lobby Obi for presidential ticket. Do you see a mass defection happening?
Frankly, I don't see mass defection because how many senatorial aspirants are going with him? How many House of Reps members are going with him? How many governorship aspirants are going with him? Maybe today or tomorrow we'll see, but I don't see it coming. And like I said earlier, Mr. Peter Obi is one of the most, he's a technocrat, you understand? He has all the ideas. But unfortunately, we're in a country where ideas alone don't sell. For you to even fly a ticket of any serious political party, some godfathers who don't even bother about your ideas must have to endorse you.
Well, you began the other time on this same issue, Mr. Abdallah, my apologies again. You began by talking about the Twitter constituency, and I really wish that there was a voting ward, a delegates ward on Twitter, but unfortunately there isn't any. And now, a quick look at just one more story before Marquette takes over again. CBN debunks rumor of Emefiele's sack. And that's been like, I mean, again, on that constituency, Twitter, a lot of noise on that one. And, you know, there are those who are saying it's not possible for the president to just sack someone like that because, you know, there is a law or process around removing him and all of that. But where do you think that came from?
What has been happening, particularly with our FS Bank, you know, responsible for that, and particularly the actions of the CBN governor. You know, for the first time in Nigerian modern history, a sitting CBN governor has identified with a political party. That is not alone. He purchased expression and nomination form of a political party.
We don't know that.
Okay, it was purchased on his behalf.
Indeed.
Yes, but
and he rejected it.
Yes, but he went to court. Yes, he went to court, asking court to bar INEC and other agencies from stopping him to contest while he is still put as CBN governor. That is one. And secondly, yes, the president doesn't have the right, you know, to fire him, but he can suspend him. And I want you to remember that Ibrahim Magu, now an AIG of the police, is still under suspension, even though a substantive EFCC chairman has been appointed by the president. Hadiza Bala Osman of the NPA was on suspension when a new person was announced. Modiba Kau of NBC is still under suspension when a new person was announced by the president. So there is a trend, particularly with this government. I don't know how they do their administrative thing. Somebody is on suspension, a new person will be announced as substantive. So there is nothing, if we just wake up and realize that the president has fired him using that word, it is not surprising. Remember, the Nigerian chief of head of treasury, Mr. Ahmad Idris, is on suspension. And he was fired by the Minister of Finance. And senior lawyers are saying that he doesn't have that locus. But still, it stands.
Well, the CBN has denied that there's no suspension or sack or anything of the sort. So I think that's the latest we still have on that particular story. If we look at what is happening on the front page of the, I'm a little spoiled for choice now, so we'll quickly run through the two of them. Let's look at the Vanguard first. Presidency, Jonathan still in the race, puts APC screening on hold. Ex-president's emergence as consensus candidate gains momentum. North prefers him to other APC contenders, says source in GJ's camp. Bielsa, APC chairman, to consult register to confirm Jonathan's membership. You know, that denial was there initially. So page 5 will give the details. What do you make of the former president's this controversial thing about him still being in the race of the APC?
So I don't know his political handlers. I think they didn't handle the former president's entry into the present political foray rightly. Look at the confusion. A form was bought for him.
And he rejected it.
By Hadas and Al-Majri.
Indeed.
Yeah, a northern governor was fingered as the person that killed the form. In the north, it is okay, Al-Majri and Hadas. But in the south, it has a backlash. Why are you being sponsored by Hadas? You know what Hadas are synonymous to now, particularly in this part of the country. And again, the legal, excuse me, the legal problem. What most, particularly those in the Jonathan is said to be being propped up by some cabal in the presidency, with the thinking that he will spend only 4 years. And with the thinking that, yes, he's a very nice, gentle, but they are mistaken. President of Nigeria is president of Nigeria, and he has experience, he has been there before. He has his constituency. They believe that, okay, he will do 4 years and hand over to them. It's joke, huge joke. You understand?
Well, so the calculations could work against them. That's what the Vanguard has on its front page. It has a number of other stories. It also has your Mr. and Mrs. And Mrs. is talking about swimming. Mr. is not quite happy, but you might want to know why when you take a copy of the Vanguard newspapers. Let's quickly look at leadership for you, and it has this one: amid protest, withdrawal, PDP picks governorship candidates, APC aspirants face delegates today. Finteri Makinde get PDP re-election tickets, and Keshim Uba Barde Mba Obuwari Obumgadu, Kefas Fubara Yaman Lamido's son secure governorship tickets as first-timers. And you also see this: Niger shifts exercise, Plateau awaits results. We've not seen any upsets so far in the governorship primaries, have we?
Not yet, because almost all these things have been, like I say, pre-planned. The PDP kingmakers across the states are working, you understand? And, the delegates, like Mr. Ayo at least say, they are now the Nigeria's procurement. It is their season, so, it only comes 4 years in a year. So, by and large, if you look at the situation, like, no sitting governor has failed to
clinch back there.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. Unlike what happened in the past, where Silva was the nice second time, and Bode and the likes.
Oh, well, I know that we're totally out of time for the papers this morning. We have to thank you so much for coming. Leadership still has a few other stories, just in case you want to look at it. Ban on Okada has come to stay in Lagos. Presidency warns against retaliation. Soludo wants justice for slain mother, 4 kids, as police intensify manhunt after killers. Very troubling development indeed in the Southeast. Yeah. Well, we have to thank you this morning for sharing your insights with us in the paper review segment. Mr. Nuruddin Abdullah is the editor of 21st Century Chronicle and also a former assistant editor at Daily Trust. Thank you so much.
Welcome. My pleasure.
We'll take a break at this moment and we'll be back to look into the day's issues. Please stay with us.
It's decision day for the People's Democratic Party across the country as delegates choose who will best represent their interests as chief executives at the governorship primary elections ahead of 2023. In Abia State, the exercise ends with the former Vice-Chancellor of Abia State University, Professor Eleazar Ikone, emerging victorious. However, Minority Leader of the Senate, Senator Naya Abaribe, pulled out of the primaries, describing the process as a charade. The withdrawal race is also seen in Akwa Ibom governorship, where Bassi Albert and Luke Onofiok pull out of the race, and the Enugu PDP governorship primary, where Senator Ike Kweramadu also backs out. In Benue State, the Speaker of the Benue State House of Assembly, Right Honorable Titus Uba, wins the election with 731 votes. In the southwest, Segun Shoumi is declared winner polling 554 votes, but elsewhere at the Olusegun Obasanjo Presidential Library in Abuja-Kaduna, another parallel governorship primary is being held under the supervision of a 5-man electoral committee led by Professor Akase Soka. Delegates from the 20 local government areas of the state are currently participating in the process, which is expected to produce a winner among other aspirants. While in Oyo State, Governor Seyi Makinde is nominated after polling the highest number with 1,040 votes. The decision of the delegates is just one step, as the decider is up to a wider population of citizens who will give their verdict in 2023.
What a day it was for the People's Democratic Party yesterday. Don't forget the APC, of course, has its own governorship primaries today. But let's walk you through the outcome of the primaries across the various states yesterday. And we're starting off with Adamawa State. Well, the incumbent governor, Governor Umaru Fintiri, emerged a winner in that primary. He actually clinched 663 votes. And right here in Lagos, there was a PDP primary as well, governorship primary, with Olajide Adediran. 679 votes, emerging winner. Runner-up was David Kolaole Vaughan with 20 votes. And in Oyo State, not too far away. Just next door, right? No. Well, Ogun will say they're next door. Next door to next door. Okay, the next door neighbor. There you go, Ogun State. You have... well, Oyo State, rather, before Ogun State. You have Governor Seyi Makinde with 1,040 votes. Runner-up, Hazim Bolarimi with 2 votes. And now to Ogun State, where Segun Showumi, you may have seen that in that report, with 554 votes, with runners-up including Jimmy Lawal, Ladi Adebutu with 30 and 15 votes. Not forgetting what has been described as a parallel primary that was held as well. I thought we had moved on from parallel elections and all of that.
There will definitely be implications for the primary elections that we're seeing with disaffection in Ogun, in Enugu, in Abia State. You know, coming with a lot of consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll have our resource person speak to it. From there, let's go to Benue, where we have Titus Uba emerging with 731 votes. His runner-up, Benson Abono, had 81 votes. That's a landslide.
Yeah, so the Speaker of the State Assembly actually emerged tops above the Deputy Governor of the state. It's an interesting one there.
Very, very interesting.
Interesting politics, too.
Oh, dear.
Then in Enugu, the winner, Peter Mba, polled 790 votes, while Senator Ike Ekweremadu, two-time Deputy Senate President, withdrew. From there, let's go to Yobe. Winner is Sheriff Abdullahi, who polled 295 votes. Runners-up, Abagana Tata, had 109 votes, while Ali Tikau had recorded 129 votes, I beg your pardon. And from there, go to Taraba, where the winner is Kefas Agu, who polled 443 votes. Runners-up, Joseph Kuini, Jerome Nyame, Joel Ikenya, Hikaya Buba Joda polled 31 votes, 24, 11, and 6 votes in that order. Ayo.
Well, yeah, it's quite a list. You know, we have in Kwara is the next one we may want to quickly look at. Abdullah Yaman had 518 votes. And there are 2 runners-up, actually. I don't know how these landslides happen. For the life of me.
This is the time you need to brush up your maths, because lots of figures flying around and you have to just pay attention.
And then also you need to work on your BP. Aliyu Aman Pategi scored 31 votes, and Professor Isa Ganda had 14 votes in Kwara. In Bauchi, 655 votes went to Ibrahim Kasim. And down southeast in Abia, you have Professor Eliezer Ikone You know, of course, we all know the Senator Inaya Baribe withdrew from that race. And in Akwa Ibom, we have Umar Eno, who is like the governor's anointed candidate, so to speak. Well, I guess we'll see that play out. And then, you know, our paper's guest was talking about some people having 2 votes, 2 votes, 2 votes each. Onofiok Luke scored 2 votes, a member of the National Assembly. Well, there was no governorship primary in Abuja, but
No, we don't have a governor in Abuja, so we don't do primaries. Well, except for Senator and I think also House of Reps. They have 2 House of Reps candidates, or 4 of them or more, who should emerge. But you should have 2 representatives for the Federal Capital Territory and a senator. Well, there are more states which also did their primaries yesterday. Delta has a winner from the PDP, Sheriff Ovori, who won with 590 votes. Runners-up, David Edevie, who had 113 votes. Senator James Manager had 83 votes, and there were 11 others who also contested. In Rivers, there was a winner. Siminialayi Fubara won with 721 votes. The runners-up came close, or did they not come close? Isaac Kamalu came with 86 votes, and 14 others were also in the race. In Gombe, the winner is Mohammed Barde. He had 160 votes. The runner-up, Jamilu Gwama, had 119 votes, pretty close. In Nasarawa, David Ombugadu won with 247 votes, and the runner-up, who is Major General Nuhu Angbazo, came pretty close with 202 votes. So I don't know if this figure tells us anything. We have a guest this morning who's going to be telling us a lot here, though. He is Jidelfo Adibe, who is a professor of political science and international relations at the Nasarawa State University in Kefi. Prof, you're welcome to Sunrise Elite this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, at least in the state where you are working, there seem to be some close political primary there in the PDP. We know the APC will be going for theirs today.
Yeah.
We don't know what it's going to be like. We hope it's just as hit-free as what we've seen. Maybe it was not exactly hit-free when you look at the withdrawals that we saw. That is also very telling. But what do the figures, from what you can see, what do they tell us? Some of them really wide, maybe the opponent only getting 2 votes. Others pretty close, looking like I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what do they tell you?
I think, for example, if you look where the governors are, it's like the case of Rivers, and the governor has a preferred candidate, an anointed candidate, you see the gap is very huge. You look at that Nasarawa state, for example, is an APC state, and that was PDP primary. So it becomes a contest among the kingmakers, because remember, it's about delegates. And some of these are the delegates that people sponsor them for the election. So they are already beholden to some interest. So it depends down on the balance of force among the kingmakers in the area. So where there's, if it's not a state control, say, by a party in power, if for example, is an APC state, then it becomes a contest among other notables within the PDP who has more of the control of the structures, and that will influence, the outcome. That's, you see that in Nasarawa State, Labaran, withdrew. Like everywhere in the world, you do your own math. You start by talking about, this is my own path to victory, and the people talk about delegate hunt. So by the time you get very close, it becomes quite obvious whether your math will work or work against you. If you look at the Enugu State, for example, Egike Ekweremadu was not the preferred candidate of the governor. And it's understandable that, instead of humiliating himself, especially under the current Electoral Act, if you run in one party primary, you can't run in another. So it makes sense to withdraw. The same thing in Abaribe. Abaribe was not favored again by the party primaries. and the party in power, the government, also wasn't apparently endorsing his candidacy. So it makes also sense that he will withdraw or be humiliated.
Well, your indicators are quite interesting, and I think that is something that we should hold in one hand. You know, the states where, that still have governors of that particular political party, we should watch how the results play out. But it will be interesting to know where there are other godfathers, apart from the governors. You know, what exactly could we have expected from states like that? There are states who had, I don't want to say founding fathers, but whose past governors also have a pretty strong influence in that state. The calculations will be a bit interesting to see.
There is always in every state the powerful groups. You can call them the kingmakers. And it depends on the number of kingmakers in a particular area and who they endorse.
I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts for us, because we have another guest on Zoom, Dr. Sam Amadi, who is an associate professor of law and director of Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, joins us via Zoom. Good morning, Dr. Amadi.
Good morning, Muke. Good morning.
I do not know what you... Fantastic. I do not know what you make of the results which we have seen so far from the PDP governorship primaries, or even the Senate or the House of Reps primaries which have been conducted so far. But what is your own reading of all that has transpired? Do you also hold it on one hand that in the states where the governors are of that political party, there would be, or we have seen, or the results that we have seen reflect an overbearing influence by those of them who are still in office?
Of course, I agree with my friend Prof, that what we are seeing is clearly a pattern in Nigerian politics. The governors have been in charge. If, take for example, the Enugu scenario, where a little known Peter, who is probably a very rich and good guy, but of course unknown, is a choice of the governor and most of the major stakeholders. Now, Ekweremadu, a better known, well-established politician, loses out. Now, the same Ekweremadu is a product of the same governor's control of the party. He was a creation of Nnamani, who brought him almost from Boka, saying nowhere, chief of staff, and made him a senator. And Ekweremadu was billed under Obasanjo to be the Senate president of Nigeria, except that the senators themselves chose Ken Nnamani. The party chose Ekweremadu. People didn't know that. So Ekweremadu was benefited from the fact that the governor, his governor Chimorok, was in charge. If you look at Enugu, the Enugu is a low-energy politics. Usually the governor determines the criteria of other influencers who are themselves influenced by the governor. Now, if you go to Abia, the same thing you see that of course, he didn't want Abadibe, who happened to come from almost the same team, the zoning caught up with him. And so what we see in this primary is the same déjà vu, what we have seen before, that Nigerian democracy is predicated on two things, muscle, whether it's money, structure, and sometimes geopolitics. But essentially, the governor or the party owner, for example, Jigawa, where PDP is not in power, are clearly totally in charge. And watch his son. Look at Wike in Rivers, where even the winner himself, he has been declared wanted, not even in sight. So primarily, what you see playing out here is that Nigerian politics is patron-client relationship. When the governor is in power, he becomes a patron. And everybody else becomes client. And when there's no governor, you see 2 or 3 patrons who control one side of the political divide, and then they determine the outcome. So you look at it one way, those delegates, those party members who elect delegates, free and fair. I watched some of the proceedings. Those are free and fair from a formalistic democracy theory point of view. Free and fair. People went and voted. But behind free and fair is that there's little agency. People are not making choices based on any defined criteria. Choices that they had to vote who the governor or who the political strongman that they should vote for. Or they have to vote the persons they have been paid to vote for. So that's where we are. And so that's no surprise. This is how it has been in 2007, 2011, 2015 to 2019. And just now, basically, the Nigerian voter, whether as party members or as the populace, are basically captured voters, pledged voters who vote based on the criteria set up by the strongman, in many cases, the governor. Some cases, the political patron.
So what about the places? I mean, have we seen any examples whereby yes, there's a sitting governor, but they have emerged from a political family, from one, for instance, Delta State. We saw the forces at play there. What precisely, I mean, we know who eventually won. We understand that he's someone who's currently in government, I think serving as a secretary to the government of the state. But what do you make of that political family in Delta State and how matters have now played out?
Beside the fact that we have hegemons, there are also conflict within the structure, what we call the structure thesis and the conflict thesis. The structure thesis is that there's a structure, every type of the structure, but the conflict thesis says within the structure there's a conflict. So we see in Delta, for example, a split between Ibori, the godfather, as it were, of the having governor, and the governor who has also built up his own muscle to play under Ibori over Delta. And so what we saw, for example, for the runoff, that Ibori's daughter barely scraped through in the runoff. We saw Uduaga's daughter lose out, saw the governor's daughter win, and we saw that the governor was able to get his candidate. We had Nduti Elubelu strong his own town, but basically idolizing the governor says Ekweme won has delivered. So the data is the governor himself who is winning big, even though he's supposed to be a protege of Ibori, who has he has not displayed. So we will see that replicated in many places where political families keep control, and then you see suddenly in other places where political families are now dislodged by a political son who somehow caps his own kingdom, or somehow breaks. So that's the conflict that Nigerian politics is so orchestrated. There's a hegemon in structural politics. There's a structural problem where the structure keeps the game. Then there's a conflict within that structure that opens opportunity. And that's what we saw also in Anambra when PDP emerged. It was a crisis of a family, a structure crisis, and he liberated it and came. So we see that through this primary, that where the structure is intact, it produces outcome. Where the structure has crisis, either because the new control of that, especially from the family, fails to keep that trust or breaks up that family and it creates a different family, we now see opportunities for irredentists, for all kinds of politicians, and opportunities to probably leverage and emerge. That's what we are seeing through this crisis.
Well, let me ask Prof this question, and both of you have spoken about the strength, the influence of the governors in all of these, and of course we know that that is the story. Some have just been hoping, when will things change? So far it seems that we're not even looking on the side of how the delegates performed, rather we're talking about the influence of the governors. Prof, do you see that as a problem, or you know it's just the same of the same? How is this going to affect anything if it's the influence of the governors we are seeing, and in which most people often say that after some time these favored, anointed candidates seem to turn on their, should I say, their masters now? We're not talking about the role the delegates played in all of these.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, you have to understand that the delegates themselves are a product of the Nigerian environment. It will be very unrealistic for you to expect them to be something drastically different from what you have at the environment itself. In other words, the delegates themselves are sometimes beholden to some interest. And many of the delegates, even from the time of the Just Convention in 1993, it's a time for them to, you know, monetize. For many of them are looking forward to becoming delegates. And then it's a time to get a slice of their own share of the national cake, which they believe those throwing the money around that, okay, well, they can justify it. Well, by the way, how did they make this money? So, yes, some delegates we have seen in recent times where delegates collected money and still voted the other way. And we read the story of someone, a candidate, was it in Delta, who collapsed because after sharing 2 million apiece to the delegates, he still got only 3 votes. So the delegates are supposed to play the role in their role is just to select. In theory, they are supposed, because it's more like indirect, they are supposed to represent certain constituencies and vote based on their own perception of the competence of the candidates. That's all we are told in theory. But then this is mediated by other circumstances. That's mediated by certain preferences of the delegates themselves. So these days, it's not just enough for you to have money. We have seen people who distribute money. The former vice president's son, we were told, after sharing money and the outcome did not favor him, the people did not deliver as promised, he asked them to refund the money. We don't know if that will be refunded, but what I'm trying to say, the point now is that, yes, delegates are supposed to go there, represent various constituencies, and choose on behalf of the constituents the people they think will best represent the interest of the country. In reality, to put it succinctly, in reality, yes, in reality, it's often they play to the wishes of other interests. Some of them, some may still take the money and vote according to their conscience. Before coming to this program, I was reading my friend Shegun Adeni's column today, where he was referring to the late Adedibu, who told Abiola during the Just Convention, yeah, we're not going to take money from you because you are one of us. And he said that after the election, he went to Abiola and said, you see, I delivered. Now, where is the delegates' money? So these things play out. The money will always be there, just like ethnicity will always be a factor in Nigerian politics, but it's not often on its own. It is not the only factor that will determine the outcome. It interacts with other variables.
Well, let me ask, Dr. Amadi, this next one. Is it to say that the delegates do not understand the burden on their shoulders, or it's just the same of the same? Because if the trend has been as it was in the beginning, so it is now and ever shall be, it probably sounds like it's going to be governance as we've had it before. So is there any hope in sight that going forward on any of the political platforms, whichever one it is, that there will be some understanding of the enormous responsibilities that delegates have, not just for the governorship primaries that we're talking about, but even for the other ones, the legislative assemblies, both in the National Assembly and the states?
So there's hope, there's real hope. But you see, the Electoral Act has also helped to shape the landscape of election and to provide incentive for this kind of behavioral change. So for example now, we do know that INEC is more on the ground monitoring behavior of parties. The Electoral Act now provides constraints around what principals or patrons can do. But again, look, the dynamics that will drive change will be twofold. One, we will see better socioeconomic environment, the poverty level and its utilization. If you look at many of the people who are pushing P2B's presidency, their profile suggests people who are economically dependent, people who are released from the trial, if you like, of ethnicity, religion, and poverty. So the shift, the growth of economy, the more we get like a middle class that's actually politically empowered and economically empowered, we have that shift. Again, the driver will also be competitiveness in the political landscape. If the smaller parties begin to mount a challenge and the electoral system begin to show us that it's not, it's not open and closed, that you can actually vote and the vote count, that small parties that are not mainstream can win, then what happens is that the electors and the owners of the parties, the major parties, begin now to know that it doesn't pay to win the primary and lose the election if you present a candidate that's not good enough, or who has the muscle, who has the resources to buy the delegates. So we will now see incentives shift away from buying delegates to endorsing candidates who have better chance of winning at the poll. So we're going to solve this problem on the supply side, not demand side, meaning we're going to create the possibility of competition, a market for votes that's transparent and competitive. So people now know that, look, the electors out there believe in their vote, and therefore, if we don't present a candidate that's legitimate, that is popular, that people want, then we're going to be punished. Now, what will come out of it is that in elections like this, in the primaries, you see people who will win because the constituencies they belong to need them. Either they are demagogues, either they are populists, either they are technocrats, either they are ethnicists, people who the people themselves want to send to Abuja or to the government. And so that dynamics will shape how the party owners will now open themselves to competition. Let me say this, if P2B, for example, takes a third party ticket, and even if it doesn't win, and push the two parties to some significant competitive election, it will be a watershed. You see, in the next election, the two parties will know that a third party can actually win a presidential election if it answers to the demands of the people. And so that has an impact in shaping how these patrons...
Just one second, Dr. Mahdi. Talking about the demands of the people, a number of things that, some would have expected is that maybe the manifestos of the parties, the programs of the parties would have played up. Some have expected that perhaps even at the delegates levels, there should be political debates. Maybe that would have helped to at least excite the mind of the delegates themselves and say, okay, this guy has it, this guy has it. Otherwise, how is the hope you're talking about going to play out?
Very good point. And if you look at the design, that's why I also blame INEC. INEC packed long time for campaign and less time for the primaries, for maybe other strategic reasons. But if you look at the time for primary, yesterday on your political to today, your data expert showed some of the candidates, and he highlighted Tambuwal, he highlighted Shibanjo, and I think Yaya Bello. Some of the guys, the candidates who have packed with great programs. But the question is, does the period allow for this interrogation and engagement? So I think it was probably a mistake to have seen the primaries as a routine process and given only 2 months window. Because what does that make forced upon the party contestant is actually to leave out the rhetoric of politics and focus on the markets, go and buy, call the strong guy in Kano, call the strong guy. And that's what we are seeing, that the election is shaping. And those who are likely to be candidates are those who have the delegates. And as we count in PDP, for example, why Peter left out was because there's no pathway to that victory. Because the delegates are people like Tambuwas, Wike, maybe Atiku suffering some loss of delegates because of the fact that the electoral process has focused attention on market, on buying and selling of delegates, on getting those contacts and talking to them, rather than going around the states and really taking time to unfold your own manifesto and program. So I think if we design it better and recognize that primaries are actually the most important part of this election, because we don't know independent candidates, and that means that the choice the people will face are choices already framed by the political party. And therefore, through the delegates who are party members, we can now go through that process, look at the candidates in a better way, and then helping electors down the line. So the design will improve, and of course, you create incentive for candidates to now really engage the people and discuss how they will deal with the issues they face. So I think we're going to get incentives right. The structuring of the business right.
Well, Dr. Mahdi, we need to go for a quick break now. And yes, our viewers may have seen Honorable Yusuf. We'll come to that. The conversation gets even bigger. But just to bring you this just in, apparently the results of the PDP primaries are still coming in. And from Kaduna State, we have this one. Mohammed Issa Ashiru has emerged the winner of the Kaduna PDP governorship primary with 414 votes. We have runners-up including Sunny City with 260 votes, Ramalan Yero, former governor, with 28 votes, and Senator Shehu Sani with 2 votes. It seemed like he saw that coming because he had been speaking about how he's not going to even go the route, the usual route. From Jigawa as well, the winner, Mustafa Sule Lamido, we talked about it with 829 votes. And in fact, Zamfara just came in as well. Winner is Dawda Lawal with 431 votes. 3 other aspirants pulled out. So, the results keep coming in. But we'll go to break now, and we'll come back to continue this conversation. Please stay with us. Dr. Dr. Sam Amadi and Professor Jideofor Adibe still with us on the program this morning. We've been taking a look at the governorship primaries in the PDP, in fact, other primaries, as well as the coming primaries in the APC. And also that, well, is it a shocker for some people, the pullout of, well, Mr. Peter Obi from the PDP's presidential race? So a couple of issues to still touch on. I'll just yield to my colleague Bukola for the next one. Bukola.
Yeah, Professor Amadi, I was talking about the responsibility, the burden on the shoulders of the delegates, whether they are fully aware of it, and perhaps whether conferences should begin to be held, amongst them, to help them understand fully the implications of their responsibility to elect candidates. But then again, we started off by talking about the overbearing or seemingly overbearing influence of the governors in determining the delegates and how it has panned out in the elections. Are the governors themselves aware of the implications of this? And how do we move in the direction where the governors will be themselves the ones to begin to champion an intellectual debate amongst delegates so that the evolution of democracy will begin to be in another direction, move in another direction? Professor Amadi?
Okay, so thank you. Well, I think good point. The civil society, INEC, they have a role to play. And that's why I think INEC is doing political education. In the West report, there was some discussion around unbundling INEC so that there would be a political education arm. There's also the idea of getting back to the days of CDS, of Omori, where we had good political focus under Babangida about educating the citizens around political leadership and their role as the electors. I think I agree with you that, look, we need to do more about political education. But again, three things are important for agents. What I call agents. Agency is the notion that human beings, citizens know that they're the ones who make the decision, the difference. We say their vote is their power, use it well. So first, you look at the economics. There's economic aspect of agency. If people are so poor and the leaders have weaponized poverty, it will be difficult for you to get people to understand really that this moment of election is a moment where they exercise their power and not to use that moment to maybe satisfy economic needs. So that's important. The second one is social. Our society is concerned around helplessness. People feel helpless everywhere. So even if you look at some people, they say, does it matter? Does it count? They don't even expect the leaders will ever translate leadership to economic or social goods for them. And therefore, this is a cash out for them. It makes more sense to get paid off at upfront rather than expect money at the end of the day. And the final one, I think that's what I'm talking about, is how do we begin to reshape their consciousness? If we take care of the economics, which is a difficult problem all over the world, take care of the social, which means we resurrect a society that's accountable, a society where the voice counts, where rule of law operates, where there's no impunity. People now recover a sense that, look, there's something called citizenship. There's a failure of citizenship in Nigeria in all dimensions. And it shows in the election. You look at the percentage of people who actually vote in this country, compared with the crisis of governance, you'll be ashamed. And look, so we don't even care to vote and care enough to vote. Then the Southeast, where there's a greater degree of despondence and distrust of government. So I think that the answer is basically you have to recognize this problem. INEC has to step in. INEC is doing what they should do more. I'm in support of INEC becoming a very strong regulator, going out there to constrain politicians and to sow back hope. The Electoral Act has actually given more people greater control. The NSAS team are ready to go into the field because they see that the Electoral Act protects more of democracy rather than protect politicians and the political parties. So if you have more of that refinement, more of INEC's role, civil society focusing now not just on monitoring election, which we do all the time, which has become a cottage industry, but now about recreating citizenship, helping citizens recover the fact that, look, in spite of this crisis, it's actually their vote that will change things. We begin to see that shift. It will take some time, but it will happen. But I tell you what, if Nigerians see an upset in 2023, and if Nigerians see a leader who comes, unusual kind of leader, who resets the institution, you'll be surprised how much people will recover their power to change things. And you will now see delegates really no longer thinking more about where's the money to give them. moral concern about who has the message that appeal to us. So it will take some time, but it requires some headwinds. And I think a competitive election, a major upset, and the rise of a leader who can inspire back hope and do things unusual will be a major catalyst for this change that we desire.
Indeed, you're right about how all segments of society should collectively own the process. But let's explore the politics a bit more. And earlier on, you observed when Mark was talking about the political family in Delta State, you referred to the emergence of the daughter of the political godfather in that state winning a ticket of the House of Representatives, whereas the governor had his way where the governorship ticket was concerned. Ahead of this time, the concern was that the governors were lamenting a loss of control of the delegate system, but there hasn't been any upset where the governorship tickets are concerned. It's either the governors were returned or their candidates, they had their way in the choice of their successors. Are we going to be seeing in that light now a surprise in the emergence of candidates winning the senatorial seats and the House of Representatives seats? Are we still going to be seeing the influence of the governors here in the coming days?
Yes, I think so. For one reason, you see, the Electoral Act did something. The legislators wanted to play politics and they played against themselves. So what has happened, like, look, we have taken off all the statutory delegates. So what that means is that certain former governors, former speakers, former this and that, who have the independence to challenge the governors and vote on point, are now removed from that list. So what you have now is the 3-man delegates in most of the elections, where the governors had control, basically, because they had the structure in the local government to deliver that. So most of the governors control those delegates right now. Unfortunately, and that's the right thing to do, really, because all delegates should be local, which is local. So because the governors are in charge, if you look at the states, there is no internal democracy in the states. The House of Assemblies are basically, most of them are rubber stamp. We focus so much on Abuja, where there is even some significant independence and separation of power. But in the states, you don't have that. So what happened by abandoning the states, by allowing the states to be where they are, the governors have created a strong, authority, power, hegemon over those states. And so what will happen, even the presidency, is that except because the presidency is going to be on national delegates, and some non-governors, they have succeeded in getting their national delegates on their side, you will see the same pattern that those candidates who have better support of their colleagues, whereas they have state governors, and those who control their territory. For example, look at the delegate list for the presidency PDP. The Northwest has a lot of those votes. The Southeast small, and the rest of the places relatively small. What I mean is that everybody who controls the Northwest states where there's no PDP governor. And in this case, it looks like it to be either a Tambuwal or maybe I can get some article. It means that that person has an advantage because...
Dr. Madi, if I may butt in, just sorry to interrupt you. Dr. Madi, I'm sorry to interrupt your thoughts there, but let me bring it to Professor Adibe here. I'd like to ask you, I mean, do you see anything? Do you see any way out of this? I think I already asked that question earlier, but I'd like to pose it to you if you see any way out of this governor's chokehold on delegate control at the political primaries.
Yeah, I think also what we overlook is that there's been a tension. It's either the party dominates or the governors. If you look at that, the whole essence of that section 24.8 about whittling, which says that, for example, that all electors, all the delegates must be democratically elected. Mm-hmm. That was to whittle the influence of the party. Where if you talk about statutory delegates, then they will have better way of controlling. So now that you removed the influence of statutory delegates, you have to look at the process through which the delegates themselves emerge. It says democratically elected, so you go to the ward, you get 3, you go to the local government, you get 1, a national. And who controls the state automatically will come to the governors. So you have more leverage for that, where you don't have a governor where the party is not in power in that state. So all the idea of voter education and all this, they help. But it's just like saying that ICPC and the EFCC should go and teach about corruption in secondary schools and all that, and that will solve the problem of corruption. It's not about they are not knowing. They do know, but you know, it is about economic rationality, as some people would say. So but the reason why it is very difficult to dislodge the governors is that because people do not commit class suicide. It is their own vested interest. They control that structure. And unless we find an alternative ways of diluting that, just like the Electoral Act tried to dilute that of the statutory delegates by saying you must be democratically elected. And then that meant immediately that the weight shifted now automatically to the governors who control the state and whatever goes down through the local government and subsystems. So unless we're able to find a way, and I think INEC has been thinking, and you know, the National Assembly people thought that the real amendment, that if we quickly put in that it will also include people that are not elected, it will solve the problem. It won't. So I think that it is part of our process of political evolution, and it's going to take a little bit while before we get it right.
I just keep wondering, though, how come governors never learn? Every time they try to, you know, elect their or get their successors in office, and it just never works out. Very rarely do we see any example working out to the end of that governor's tenure.
I agree with you, but also you have to look at it, what will be their alternative. If they decide not at all to support the process, to support, you know, to try to have an eye on who will support them, it means that even whatever legacy they think they are leaving behind, it may start by dismantling it immediately, just like we see the APC at the federal level doing almost immediately they came in terms of demarketing the previous administration. So you do your own calculation, even if it is 1 year that you get this grace period before the attack comes. So I think that's also what some of the things they are counting on. But is it a good investment? They must have calculated that after knowing the history, that rarely does it work, and they still keep doing it. It means there's something they are seeing in it.
Maybe we'll ask them in future, but today we have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Professor Jidofo Adibe is a professor of political science and international relations at the Nasarawa State University in Kefi. And Dr. Sam Amadi, who joined us via Zoom, is an associate professor of law, director of Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Dr. Amadi, thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily. Let's take a break at this point. As Kayode did say, it does get deeper. You already have a peek into who we're bringing on next. Do stay with us.
Delegates of the People's Democratic Party PDP from across states in the north file out to elect governorship candidates for the party ahead of the 2023 general elections. Over 200 aspirants have obtained forms to contest in the PDP governorship primaries, looking ahead to get the party's flag for the 2023 general elections. And these delegates have the task to select 29 candidates for the state where the governorship elections will hold in the 2023 general elections. After hours of voting and sorting in some of the states where the exercise commenced early, officials announced the winners.
We have a great work ahead of us. Therefore, what is important is not any long speech. What is important is that the party must be united. We must see our task as big, and we must come up with strategies to challenge it.
In Jigawa State, the son of the former governor Sule Lamido won the PDP governorship ticket, just as the incumbent speaker of the Benue State House of Assembly emerges winner in the state.
I call on all Jigawa citizens, irrespective of party affiliation, to make a pledge for a new beginning. I ask you to trust me, work with me, campaign with me, and vote for me.
People say that when God gives you a little, he also gives you a very big neck. to carry it. And I found a big neck. The big neck, I found it in the leadership of our party.
The exercise, however, could not hold in Niger State due to disagreements on the composition of the delegates list. 6 aspirants are in the race for the governorship ticket in Kaduna State, but accreditation and screening of delegates did not start on time. The PDP is currently in control of 15 states of the federation, and the party says it hopes to take control of more states and the central government in 2023.
I particularly like this next conversation because there's a balance on different angles. So first we have a man and a woman, one from the APC, another from the PDP. One has clinched his party's ticket, another is hoping to clinch her party's ticket. So let's get right into it, just to help you understand the intricacies and perhaps give you an inkling as to what to look out for within these parties. We're joined today by Kate Banjoko right here in our Lagos studio. She's a member of the All Progressives Congress APC, and she's an aspirant House of Representatives Amuwo-Dofi constituency here in Lagos. She joins us live in our Lagos studio. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. And joining us virtually is, well, you may have seen him earlier, Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, who is a member of the People's Democratic Party, is a representative Kaba Bunu Ijumu Federal Constituency in the House of Representatives, and is a senatorial candidate Kogi West of the People's Democratic Party. So I will come to Honorable Yusuf in a moment, but you know what they say, ladies first. And I mean, tomorrow is the day, or as I say, the day for you essentially, but help us understand the process, because the question or the conversation around delegates, some have said it's a delegate procurement process. Some say, well, it's essentially just convincing them that I have plans. How has it been for you?
Wow, okay, so human beings are just human beings, you know, and you must, a lot of people are visual, some are oral. You have to speak to your delegates. You also have to ensure that they see things that probably if you've been in office before, someone like me that has been in office before, something that you have done in the past, your antecedents, and then you're able to market yourself to them. It's a process of marketing. You know, the way you do one-on-one marketing, that's what it is. And you have to make sure that the people that you're talking to are people who understand why their role in this whole process is actually the most important role in an election. They're the ones who have the most critical role in the elections to choose for the party who the party's candidates will be at different levels.
And this is not to, I mean, touch on your chances or what have you, but if you can go deeper, what is most important to delegates? Is it your pedigree, your performance in office, or some other considerations, like maybe just how financially capable you are? And we have to speak to these things because it's out there already. So it'll be good for you to give us an insight into this. So what do the delegates essentially look out for in those conversations you have with them? Is it, okay, I'm going to do this. This is what I have done. Or, okay, well, this is what I have for you. Okay, now you can listen to me.
Okay, so like I said, it's a combination of different things. In our party, the APC, the All Progressive Congress, if you look at the crop of delegates that we have, they're young, vibrant, the old, not too old, you know, but people who can relate with what is happening in the times. Now, the delegates that we have are delegates that are intellectuals. They're gainfully employed. So if you're telling me that because I want to give you money, they are gainfully employed, so your money really wouldn't make a difference. They want to know what you've done. They want to know who you are. They want to understand your personality. You understand what I'm saying? They want to know what you're bringing to the table. not in terms of finances, but in terms of ideas, innovation, creativity. You understand? And what are you going to do to improve the lot of the public and the local government or the federal constituency that you would represent if you're chosen?
Yeah. Essentially, you're saying that for you, it has not been a delegate procurement process. It has been
it's not a
intellectual conversation,
yes.
ensuring that they see, I mean, your points, what you can do and what you have done.
Yeah.
So really, as a woman now, that's another ball game entirely.
Oh, wow.
And yes, I mean, it is the elephant in the room. There's the perception that, okay, a woman might not be as a big heavyweight as the average man. Well, that's the perception. But I'm glad that you're here. You have walked through the whole process. Is there any truth to that theory, that assumption that a woman does not pull as much weight as a man in Nigerian politics?
Well, in Nigerian politics that you have said, I would say it's true. But in the party that I belong to, I must say it again, that in the party that I belong to, the All Progressives Congress, the 35% affirmative action is what we're working towards, okay? Because that is a promise that the party chairman, Senator Adamu, has pledged to the populace. That is what our First Lady is also pushing. Our First Lady, Dr. Aisha Buhari, I mean, we had a few weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with her, and she was very, very adamant. She was there with the national woman leader, Betha Edu, and that is what we are pushing. That's what the party is pushing. We are working towards it. Yes, it's the elephant in the room. Yes, it is alien to us as a people because of the culture that, that we have. But we are going to break the bias. That's what we're doing in APC. We're breaking the bias, ensuring that more women are encouraged. And that is why you see that even at the point of procuring the forms, where men were paying 10 million, women were told to pay 1 million just for the expression of interest forms, but the nomination forms were given free.
Isn't that to say, confirm what Kayode has just asked, that women are perceived to not have that kind of financial weight?
Financial weight, yes. I mean, you know that a lot of women in Nigeria, when it comes to finances as compared to men, it's not equal. Because people believe that the man should ensure that he's the one who feeds the family, the women are the ones at home to manage the funds. So money doesn't come easily to the women. And because money doesn't come easily to the women, the party has also seen that whatever happens, beg, steal or borrow, women must emerge as candidates.
A lot of women will beg to differ, part of it, because you just realize they have that finances somehow.
Because I've had this debate with a number of men, and what they say is, if you want a level playing field, the men work for the money. They go all out, to be able to ensure that they meet the requirements of the party by coming up with the 100 million naira, the 70 million naira, that the women should also be able to do the same if they want, that equal playing field. What do you say to that kind of argument?
Well, the argument is not valid. It is not valid. Because even now you see that a lot of women are MDs of organizations. A lot of women are thriving much more than men these days. You find that even in the world, you find more women doing more things, earning more money. Some families, it's the women that earn the money. But our culture just has not evolved enough to see that women can afford these things. But you see, I'm sure that is even why our party, not looking at, they're giving every woman a playing field such that whether some women desire to be in politics, but may not have the financial backing. And they know that a lot of women who also want to go into politics and may not have the financial backing may be faced with certain vices that are also not, how would I put it, will not portray the woman in a good light. So they will rather the women, they come in with I'm trying to use the word, on a good pedestal, not on a pedestal of immorality or anything around that.
One of the things, my apologies for butting in, one of the things that one wonders is how not just the parties, but the political class views this. So let's see if we can share a similar comment from Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, who Kayode introduced earlier as joining us virtually from Lokoja. Honorable, there are a number of people, first of all, to talk about the first issue that Honorable Banjoko had to deal with, and that is how the delegates emerge. And do they even, in your opinion, understand the enormity of responsibilities that they had to contend with? You are vying for office. What's been your conversation with the delegates who are supposed to throw up candidates? Honorable, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, and thank you for this privilege. The conversation with delegates began almost 3 months ago. I need to explain to our people that you do not wait for election to be a week before you start conversation. All the dynamics and intricacies that were outlined by Professor Amadi and the other prof on what come to bear, how a candidate emerge, are right, are correct, very correct, but the engagement, can you hear me?
Yes. Oh dear. Well, we seem to be having it.
Can you hear me?
Well, we can hear you, but if you don't mind, let's quickly, we can hear you now. But if you don't mind, can we quickly take care of that challenge so that we can have a better conversation with you when we return from this break? Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Honorable, you said that, in your opinion, conversation with delegates needs to start 3 months before now. That's where you ended it. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was trying to say that conversation with delegates started long ago. Like, I'm using myself as an example. And my other co-contestants. We have several local government cookie ways. We're going around every of these local government interaction with delegates. Before it was discovered that the statutory delegate would not be part of the election. We're seeing statutory delegate. Then when the elected delegate emerged, we're seeing them. So there has always been an engagement. A lot of delegates have made up their mind before they did who they wanted among the aspirants. Yes, other factors could come in, but to a larger extent, you cannot downplay the effect of those conversations and those engagements. So I'm trying to explain is that delegates are informed. Yes, they can be influenced by Godfather and other factors, but a lot of delegates know which the direction they want to go before they do it.
Well, Honorable Yusuf, you need to speak to this point. By the way, maybe I should say congratulations, because you edged out Senator Dino Melaye, and a lot of people didn't quite see that coming, really. So this is like an upgrade that you're seeking. But speak to us about this much talked about delegate procurement process, and it's been said time and again. How much did you have to dole out to delegates to convince them to vote for you?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead. Well, I can see you, Honorable. I can hear you as well.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Honorable.
Oh, okay, thank you. You asked me how much did I have to dole out? The truth of the matter is that doling out has its effect, but it's not that significant. It is not possible in Nigeria today to aggregate together. You do not give them transfer or what have you. I wish it is the other way around. However, most delegates who voted for me, with or without giving them transfer to go back, came on that they were committed so much so that they were staying in my own place before we went to the election. So I cannot say this amount I gave. I made transportation available because it's 7 local governments. Some have to travel 2 hours. Some might provide buses to bring them to the location and what have you. Going forward, there might be things that the party have to take care of so as not to put a burden on the aspirants and begin to use that as a way of coring the support of the delegates. So it's not like appropriate, but we provided such logistics, even feeding, to make sure that you will not stay for 5, 6, 3 hours like mine now. It happened that the election was to be held the primary held in a particular day, we had to have a rerun. So some didn't go home. Some had to sleep. So these are the logistics that must be taken care of. But I will advocate that maybe next time there should be such a provision by the party to take away the responsibility from aspirants. So I will limit our ability to influence those things.
And I think that's a major point, really. I don't know how much, but imagine you have to sort out those delegates. So what happens to newcomers that want to just, serve the nation? If they don't have that financial backbone, as it were, I wonder how far they can go. But, I mean, it's been said that for someone maybe running for the House of Reps. Let
me talk into this.
Okay, just
let me speak to this. You got me the statement now.
Okay, let me add to this question so you can take everything together. So it's been said that if you want to run for House of Reps, for example, just consultations and primaries, you can spend up to 100 million. For Senate, they say it's more. Have you had to spend up to 100 million in the build up to this point? And you can take that with the other question.
Thank you. Let me start from the other question. There's this assumption that those in office have enormous resources in their hand. It's a wrong assumption. I ran an election from the field before being a politician. I was not in office when I ran my first election. And I was able to defeat my opponent, not because I had the largest amount of money to throw around or what have you. We must not take away from the people that they have some conviction of what they expect or what they want from whoever they want to elect. And there's this another thing I want to change. Businessmen have a lot of money more than politicians. A contractor makes more than $1 billion in some transaction. Like a politician could be for 30 years without seeing $1 billion. But this narrative on the street gives the impression that once you are in office, you are in billion. I want to correct that narration. And two, it depends on
just as it was making a very critical point, Honorable Yusuf. Okay, we'll return to Honorable Yusuf. And the question I was going to ask him, I'm hoping that he'll still get an opportunity to answer this question when he returns. But I'll put it through to Honorable Banjoko. We started off by talking about the excessive influence of the state governors and how nothing has changed, having realized the emergence of their anointed candidates to succeed them in office, or returning mostly unopposed. If you look at the numbers coming out from the election primary process, speak to us about what the governors are looking out for in a delegate, because we can't talk enough about what it takes to be a delegate. So if the governors are the ones determining who becomes a delegate, what are the governors looking out for in a delegate?
Well, it's strange to me that you would ask that, because the governors are not the ones who actually pick the delegates. The delegates are picked at the local government level. The governor is only entitled to be a member of just one local government, for example, in Lagos. But yes, he will have his tentacles, he will have his eyes here and there. But in our case, it was open. Everybody was entitled to purchase the delegate forms. It was open, it was announced. If you were interested in being a delegate, go and purchase the forms. And if you've purchased the forms, return them with XYZ documentation. And that was it. So I'm not sure that the governor would have had any influence as such in this, except, you see, you're talking about maybe the statutory, maybe the EXCO and all that, and that's not what is playing out here.
The elected delegates now, you're saying the governors have no say, no influence whatsoever in who becomes a delegate in their party?
Well, from what I know and I understand, no. Because here, in my party, everybody was told, every aspirant, go and purchase delegate forms for your delegates, and if any independent delegate wanted to contest, go and get the delegate forms.
Are you speaking for APC nationally or APC from your experience in Lagos?
I'm speaking from my experience in Lagos, and I know that what is my experience in Lagos is what it was supposed to happen nationally, because it was a national announcement.
Okay.
So is there any contention between those seeking offices in the House of Representatives and the Senate, and between them and the governors over their emergence?
Okay, so this is it. The delegates that will emerge, the same set of delegates are going to vote for the governor. They're going to vote for the House of Assembly, sorry. They're going to vote for the House of Rep. They're going to vote for the Senate, okay? Now, are you going to tell me that each of those people will share all 5 delegates in each ward? Do you understand what I'm trying to say to you?
But do you deny that the governors are interested in who becomes the House of Representatives candidate and who becomes a senatorial candidate?
It will be good for them, but we do not share the same delegates. They have state delegates. We have LGA delegates. They are two different people. There are 2 different sets of people in APC. You have the state delegate that will vote for the governor. You have the LGA delegates that will vote for House of Rep, House of Assembly, and Senate. And yes, even the president. So the truth is that how is it possible for him to share in all of this? I, as the candidate, would also be interested in who votes for me. Do you understand? Over and above who votes for the senator.
But you don't deny that the governor has an interest in...
He must have an interest.
Absolutely.
But he doesn't have control of that interest. But
you know what they say, I mean, we've seen this time and again, how governors are influential in determining the party structure, the funding of the party. I mean, it's simple. He who pays the piper dictates the tune.
That is where the new electoral act has changed a lot of things. Ordinarily, it would have been the executive committee, that's the LGA structure that was set up, you know, that would have taken care of the question that you're asking. But that is not what the case is now, because you only have 5 people per ward over and above the 27 that would have per ward that would have voted before.
I know someone who is very interested in this conversation, and it's Markwe. Markwe.
Well, indeed, I do not know if Honorable Tajuddin is back online. I mean, that part where you asked him how much he doled out. But it will be interesting to see, because whether or not... sorry, that's for Madam Banjoko now. You've talked about how the delegates are different, and even though the governor has an interest, he does not have control. Now, some people might say that the dynamics of Lagos is very different from the dynamics of elsewhere. In some states, we've seen an overbearing influence. At least it appears that way. It might not be that is, but from what we know of Nigerian politics, it does appear that from the results, in the state where the governors are from the same party as, you know, the primaries being conducted that day, we do see some influence, so to speak, in terms of the landslide. And in some other places, we see that there is some contestation between popular candidates. I do not know if you've seen that emerge anywhere between yourself and the person who was, you know, a runner-up to you in the primaries conducted in Lagos State. How would you say that interest played out in Lagos?
Mapwe, good morning. We haven't run the elections. Primary elections in Lagos hasn't even held for House of Reps. It should hold tomorrow in Lagos State. Now, yes, we've seen quite a lot happen in other states, different parties and all that. But for APC, it's usually an umbrella. What happens, that's what it's supposed to be. What happens in Lagos is what is supposed to happen in other states, okay? The principles are the same. 5 delegates per ward, and everyone will go and purchase the forms for each of their delegates if, you know, they want them to contest or the ones that they want to support them. Now, these same things is what is going to happen all over Nigeria. The governors having interest in this election, in the delegates, is expected, but like I said before, they do not have control, except where they want to hand over. But even when they want to hand over to to their successors, they will definitely have interest in who takes it after them, who will come in after them, because one, they want continuity of projects they've started. They want to ensure that the people are taken care of. They want to ensure that the party's constituencies are followed to the letter. There's so many, party's constitution, sorry, is followed to the letter. So they must ensure that whoever succeeds them will be someone who has the same kind of ideologies and even more creative than they are.
Okay, we're winding down now. I don't know, Honorable Yusuf, are you back? Just so we can have, oh, there you go. We have Honorable Yusuf back. So you can land on that response you were given to just how much you have spent so far in this process. Honorable TJ, are you there? Well, looks like the connection is trying to play fast one and us. But, Madam, just let's wind down on this one. It will seem that the perception, the people have about how politics should be played, how it should be done, is different from what happens inside the political party. So when people hear some of these things, they're shocked. Like, what I mean, why is this happening? So why is there a disconnect, as it were? So I can give the Twitter example now. I mean, there's an idealistic sense of how politics should be played. There shouldn't be all this talk about inducements, delegate procurement process. It should be based on competence, not who is the godfather and all of that. But in the political parties, it is way different. So why is there that disconnect?
It's Nigeria is an emerging democracy, and it will have its teething problems, okay? And part of the teething problems is what you see. People, it's like you have a bottle of dirty water, and you're putting it under a tap constantly. Of course, the clean water going into the dirty water will first make it look at what it may not even mix, especially when it has oil in it. But the consistency of the clean water going into that bottle will flush out the dirty water, and you would eventually have a clean bottle of water. That is exactly what is happening.
Are you clean water?
Yes, I am clean water.
Okay, there you go. It's been an interesting conversation. We have to anchor at this point. I wish you the very best tomorrow, just about 24 hours from now. We've been speaking with Madam Kate Banjiko, who is a member of the All Progressives Congress. She's an aspirant House of Representatives, ward of a constituency here in Lagos, as well as Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, who is a member of the People's Democratic Party. Oh, Honorable TJ Yusuf, you're back. Okay, it's frozen. We'll hopefully continue this conversation another time. But let's quickly take a feedback. We'll try to get Honorable Yusuf back to respond to those questions. But let's take a feedback. And I'll start with this one from, let me see. This one is from Abdulsalam Yusuf of the PDP governorship primaries result, saying, one will expect that Nigeria's political routine will have moved on from parallel primary election issues. Enough of unnecessary litigations due to post-primary election discrepancies. Let us channel the energy we waste on attending court proceedings to fix the immediate issues bedeviling our great country. Enough is enough, he says.
Interesting. And Olagunjo Oladele is just as concerned about the delegates procurement system. And he says, delegates going for the highest bidder is an undemocratic relic that was created to produce money politics and prioritize delegates' decisions over individual voters. A political system that relies on limiting choice on such a grand scale based on money. I guess it didn't end there.
Festus Akimboewa has this one. If our political parties fail to pass the elementary test of fielding qualified and credible people in 2023, it'll be difficult to create the better society we crave for. It could also be an unprecedented disaster for our country. A word is enough for the wise, he says.
And Professor Enakena has this. He says parties shouldn't become encumbrances to themselves by deriding strategic ideas that make it count that women, who constitute over 65% of Nigeria voting population, be given important role within the party structures, and our youth shouldn't accept acquiesced politics. Well, that's the tweet with which we conclude this morning. Thank you so much for sending in your comments and showing interest in this program. We don't take it for granted. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogunyusi.
I'm Kayode Okichelu.
And continue with the conversation online. I am Bukola Samuel Wenimo.
Maya Makinde. Have a wonderful day.